Shalom, and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. This is a recording of Rabbi Adam Kligfeld's weekly Rashi study class.
Hello to anyone who's listening to this on the Temple Beth Am podcast series. We are rolling towards the end of the 12th chapter of Shemot, which we've been in for a long time. We already are in Exodus night, past Exodus night. They've left Egypt, and we did part of, but not all of, the long mathematical Rashi that tries to link together every generation from when we started hearing about the Israelites eventually going to be in a foreign land in Abraham's covenant amongst the parts, Brit B'nai B'tarim, to this moment. And that was in verse 40. And we read as much of it as we're going to read in this class. There are very few times that we skip a little bit. And now we're on verse 41 of chapter 12. I'll read verse 40 again, just to get us rolling, and then we'll assign someone to read verse 41. Okay. Verse 40 was, Umoshav B'nai Yisrael, the dwelling, not the town near a kibbutz, the dwelling of the children of Israel, Asher Yashvu b'Mitzrayim, that they dwelt in Egypt, Shloshim Shana v'Arba Ma'ot Shana, was 30 years and 400 years. Okay, so the basic information is telling us the length of the time in Egypt, and we discussed how there are a lot of different ways that the tradition counts up that experience. Does that mean, and that's not necessarily counting only slavery, that's counting, but there are many different ways of counting it. And Rashi went off on a tangent. Now we're on verse 41. Let's see, Carol, you in a place where you can read?
Yes.
Okay.
Catching up here, 41.
Yeah.
Okay. Vayhi miketz shloshim shana va'arba me'ot shana vayhi be'etzem hayom hazeh yatsu kol tzivot Adonai me'eretz Mitzrayim.
Okay.
Okay, so it was miketz at the end.
Yep.
The end of 30. So 30 year and 400 years.
Right.
And it was, that's sort of exactly, I don't know, this day that went out all of the, I don't know how to translate Sivot. I mean, armies of God.
Right. Sivot is a hard word to translate, as sometimes you see it translated as hosts, right? Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzvaot, holy, 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 Lord of hosts. It's the word from which we get the modern word army. Look how Onkelos translates it. Nefaku, which is Yatsu, Kol, Cheilaya, Chayil, soldiers, all of the military, all of the might, right? So whom is it a reference to? The Israelites, but it's the Torah speaking kind of florid language, that as if all of the Israelites were good Chabadniks in Sivos Hashem, right? They're in the army of God, and the truth is that about Sivos Hashem, it's Chabad's youth group, right, or at least one of the youth groups. So I have a badge somewhere when I was 7, and I got my first badge in Sivos Hashem, the army of God, and this is where it comes from: the idea that if you're in the people, if you're part of the people, and you count yourself as having been one whom God rescued from Egypt, you're in the army. You're part of God's array in the world. Okay. Anything else, Carol, or anyone else on the verse itself, on how to translate it, on what's coming up? Is there a napkin over there? Yes, Diane. Give Diane a microphone. Thank you. Yeah, let's take the microphones off the stands.
So this word be'etzem.
Diane, hold on 1 second. Does anybody need a smaller chair because you're cramped? I asked Raul to bring a few smaller chairs. Is it easier if you need a smaller chair, Joel?
No.
All right, well, let's bring one more for Rosemary. Here. Okay. Okay, leave them there. Thank you, Raoul. Okay, go ahead, Diane.
So this word be'etzem, it's translated here as to the very day. And I'm wondering if it's like ad hayom. Is this a suggestion that this was written sometime later and even till today?
Which translation are you reading?
Sefaria. So
Do you know whose it is? Because it's a JPS. Because it wouldn't surprise me if that translation is one that is translating through the Rashi you're about to read, right? So I think the English of to the very day is a way of saying precision, right? To the exact moment on the very day, down to the minute that was predicted, that's when they left. I think that's what that translation means, which is or is not what the word be'etzem means. But it'd be interesting to see who's the author of that translation. I see Stevie's hand. Let's bring the microphone this way. Diane?
It's only half about this verse, but
Watch your head, Marshall. Yeah. Okay.
So, somehow we have to reconcile the language of B'etzem Hayom Hazeh with the following verse, which is Leil Shimurim, which refers to evening or night, and
right.
It's not exactly contradictory, but it's not obvious what's going on.
Correct, because B'etzem Hayom Hazeh could also mean smack in the middle of the day. It could mean at the apex of the day, right? It could mean at the strength of the day, because etzem is related to the word that means bone, it means self, and it means like the central essence of something, right? Do you have an interesting translation, Larry?
Yeah, commentary, not translation. So Kaplan, the translation that Kaplan has is at the end of the 430 years, all of God's armies left Egypt in broad daylight.
At the end of. That's his translation?
That's his translation. And then his comment is in broad daylight or on that very day.
On that very day, yeah.
And then altar is, and it happened at the end of 430 years, and it happened on that very day. All the battalions of the Lord went out from the land of Egypt, but he has no commentary on it.
Yeah. Everett Fox says it was at the end of 30 years and 400 years. It was on that same day. That same day is, to me, evocative of to that day. All of Yahweh's forces went out from the land of Egypt. Tova?
This is anticipating the next verse, but if we are reckoning a day as beginning in the Arab, that begins the day, then it would seem like the self-same day would be the beginning of that exact day, which would be Arab.
Right. And it's also a question as to which moment is actually being described. Yeah. Are we describing the moment when all of this stuff began to happen, or the moment the first Israelites stepped beyond the borders of Egypt, right? Is this happening? Are we talking about the thing that happened after the angel of death? And it's also already has happened, right? Because we're sort of going backwards. The editorial voice of the Torah is saying those things that you just read about, and Pesach, and the angel of death, and remember they already left from Ramses to Sukkot. Let me tell you that thing happened, B'etzem Hayom Hazeh, on that very day. But it's vague. Rebecca. That
with the brown sweater.
Yeah. The one sitting next to Leonard.
So I think the word be'etzem is right. It's emphasizing the 430 days, 430 years versus one day. And it could be that it's not only the accuracy of that day, that it's right then at 430 days, but that it took just one day, that everybody left.
Oh, that's interesting.
In one day, and it didn't, what you would expect, take, a real immigration kind of process.
At the end of more than 4 centuries, within one day, Be'etzem, that day, they're all gone. Beautiful, lovely reading. Marshall, and then Larry.
I'm reminded of Parshat Chayei Sarah.
Good.
where the order is Mea, Esrim, B'Sheva Shanim. But then there's a homiletic comment about that. Here, there's no comment about the order of Meket Shloshim Shana at the end of 30 days, the Arba Mayot Shana at the end of 400 years.
Right. That sometimes that way of ordering numbers is just understood as a plain way the Torah speaks, and sometimes it's an opening for Midrash. Larry? And then Carl, and then I see. Is your hand up, or are you okay? And Paul.
Yeah. So I'm wondering what it meant, if it meant on that very day, did they have a calendar? So I think, but I'm not sure, that it gave it the office.
This is the office. This is the office.
Oh, he's giving it to me. I know. I understand now. Anyways, did they have a calendar? So we read several verses ago, maybe even a chapter before, there was a date, right, of Pesach. But I'm wondering if they really had a calendar. And now I'm reminded of a book by Daniel Borstein. He wrote this trilogy, 3 books. One was called The Discoverers, one called The Seekers. Anybody know these books? They're fantastic books, really dense. He spends a long time talking about the calendar. So Tova is going to correct me if I'm wrong. But people didn't have calendars for a long time. And even when there were calendars, the people didn't actually know the calendars and know the dates. They only knew the seasons. So I'm really wondering, did they have a date? Did Rashi? What are we referring to? And he goes back to the previous verse. You didn't want to read the mathematics. Who came to Egypt? Is it the date that Jacob came to Egypt? Did he know that date? I know we moved to Los Angeles on July the 20th, 2016, but that's one of the only dates I know of when I arrived in a place. So I'm just wondering if it is on that very date, probably it's just giving you an idea, maybe in the season.
How soon after that July 20th date did you have that meeting with me to wonder whether or not you wanted to be at all active at Temple Beth Am? Was that 2 days later, 3 days later?
Literally, I'm glad you remember. It was after the Chagim.
It was Be'etzem Hayom Hazeh. Okay, Carl, and then Paul, and then Stevie, and then Norm. And then it'll be end of class.
My question is, do we have a time of day for the departure from Egypt? And the only thing I can find is verse 31 that says, God called to Moses and Aaron at night and said, get out. And should we infer from that they hastened and left at night, or they took a few hours to pack their stuff and they left in the morning? Or do we know? Do we care?
There was references before when God is talking to Moses about the middle of the night, kechatzot halayla, and then you're gonna have chatzi halayla coming up, and so chatzi halayla is sometimes understood to be midnight, because chatzi is half, right? The Torah's own testimony is not 100% consistent. Paul.
Well, we were talking about whether they all left on one day, but that seems pretty unequivocal. Both the Etz Chaim translation and the Sefaria translation says on that very day. That it seems to me that unequivocally says they all left that day.
Right, which is a choice to read Be'etzem in that way, right? But that may or may not be what the word actually meant. You have the microphone, Tova, so then we'll go to Norm and then to Stevie.
Going back to the idea of calendar, I've just been thinking about it. I just happen to have been reading quite a bit about Mayan and Aztec calendars. And the truth is that people were really acutely aware of time, maybe not quite the way we think about it, but certainly in terms of moon phases, in terms of equinoxes, in terms of solstices. And so I don't think we can make it specific to an hour, though there were Mayan mathematical calculations that were incredibly acutely accurate mathematically. For example, their calendar, it's so it's difficult to pin down exactly how the view of time would be, but the idea of exactitude, I think you find in a lot of cultures.
Norm and Stevie?
My guess is that you're right. And if
Let's stop right there.
if we took a poll on Pico Boulevard of people coming out of one of the kosher restaurants today, we would find that the majority of them would not be able to immediately answer that today is the 13th of Kislev, which it is. A few of them would be able to calculate, say, oh, Hanukkah starting on such and such a date, that's so many days from now. And then maybe a few others that would happen to know or be able to figure it out in their head. But most wouldn't know it offhand. But in this case, at the beginning of chapter 12, HaKadosh Baruch Hu spoke to Moshe and Aaron, and they said, this is going to be the first of the months. Tell everybody on the 10th you have to get an animal that you're going to sacrifice. People were this month. People who ordinarily wouldn't care about the passage of time because it wouldn't affect their lives very much. This month, everybody knew exactly what day it was. Everybody knew we're doing this on this date. We did that on the 10th. We're counting the days because we're going to be leaving. Everybody knew.
Meaning, so, and therefore, the community was expecting a certain date, a certain time, and this verse is confirming that's precisely when it happened. It transpired as it was predicted to transpire.
I think that's part of it. Yeah.
Okay, good. Stevie?
So a few things. First, Paul, that Etz Chaim and Safari are both using the JPS translation, so they should always agree.
Well, Safaria has 10.
Safari, yeah, but the default one that it shows you. And then to Carl, point out that in Deuteronomy, when you get the description of the holidays, it says, because you Exodus, from Egypt, Lila, which the rabbis have a hard time trying to figure out. How is that nighttime when Exodus reads more like it's daytime than like it's nighttime? But what I wanted to say before all that was that this is if we look at my dad just looked at the beginning of the chapter. If you look at the last verse of the chapter, you'll see what's more or less the same verse. This is what's sometimes referred to as resumptive repetition, which possibly means that everything that's in between is sort of this parenthetical, and that the story is on hold and will resume after there. But it's just worth pointing out, I think, that we have essentially the same verse except with the people of Israel being named instead of being referred to cleverly.
Verse 51.
51. Yeah.
Verse 51 in its entirety is essentially the second half of our verse 41, right? So if you go through if you start at the Et Nachta, the wishbone trup in our verse 41, and you read Vayihi be'etzem hayom hazeh, and it was in that very day, Yatsu kol tzivot Adonai me'eretz Yitzrayim, all the hosts of God left Egypt. And then you look at verse 51, which we'll get to in a couple of months, It's as if it's beginning at that nachta, Vayihi, same word, be'etzem hayom, same words, hazeh, same word. Instead of our verse is Yatsu, they left. Now we have Hotzi Adonai, God took out. And then instead of kol tzivot Adonai, it's et bnei Yisrael, Me'eretz Yitzrayim, and the verse later on brings in the notion of tzava, of army, of array at the end. Al tzivotan, God took them out in their grand array, upon their army, something like that. But it's essentially the same information.
And the last thing I wanted to say is that, Rashi has only something to say on this verse. The Midrash does go on and on and on. And there's, so there's a lot that Rashi could have said. But
correct, which is true in general, and sometimes it's more true, right? So every halacha sometimes, and particularly Hilchot Shabbat, is described as a mountain hanging by a thread, right? There are very few verses in the Torah that talk about the observance of Shabbat. None of them mention how to make tea, right? So the mountain of material that we live by and observe comes from a very, very thin string of you shall do no work and not create a fire. And nearly every verse of the Torah, you can say that narratively as well. The amount of narrative midrash, Agadic midrash, way dwarfs the material of the Torah, and some even more so, right? Okay, I see Rick's hand, then we'll go back around. Rick, you've been waiting. Go ahead.
I just put my hand up just because we went to 51. Just a little trope thing and a word thing. There it's Hotzi. It's God actively bringing us out. In the first sentence, 41, it's just Yatsu. They just went out. So I like the drama is heightened by the Kadma V'Yazla, Hotzi Adonai. So the emphasis there is God doing it, where in 41 it doesn't, Sivot Adonai is there, but it's not like God actually bringing us out at that point. Just a subtle difference there.
Yeah, thank you, Rick. Okay, let's go back around. Norm?
I suspect that the sort of ambiguity or conflict between at night and at day is the Torah anticipating that we will eventually go into exile and have 2 days of Yom Tov and 2 Shabbat, not wanting to do the exact same thing on both. So the first night we sing it happened at midnight, and the second day we think it happened on Pesach.
Hysterical. You know, when our senior staff and the clergy meet, we're having a series of meetings over the last few weeks and months, including one today, to prepare for just how operations while I'm on sabbatical. And they're constantly joking and teasing about which of my rules they're going to change while I'm gone, and that is a very good chance I'm going to come back to a synagogue that only observes 1 day Yom Tov. Barry.
Jumping into Rashi, it was on the 15th of Nisan that the angels came to Abraham foretelling birth of Isaac, and it was the 15th of Nisan.
Well, we're about to read that. You have to help it.
What's the exact?
That's where we're. Hold on. We'll get there. We'll get there. Okay. Anyone else around the table? Okay. Carol. Hopefully your thunder has not been completely stolen. Read Rashi.
Okay. He quotes the entire sentence. V'gomer v'yahi be'etzim hayom hazeh. Magid shekevan shehigia haketz lo ikvan hamakom keheref ayin.
Okay.
So it's said that when the end arrived, or this conclusion arrived, I can infer ikvan, but I don't really know what that means.
La'akev in the PL means to delay. So lo ikvan means he, God, did not delay them. And the formal subject of ikvan is hamakom, right? That this, for some reason, Rashi in this verse, and this commentary decides to call God by hamakom, the holy omnipresent, did not delay them, lo ikev otam.
Okay. All right. Or even a blink of an eye.
A blink of an eye. Okay. So Rashi is reading the etzem hayom hazeh to mean not just that very day, but as you see a second, at that very time, at the exact instant that this had been prophesied and foretold for generations, going back to what Barry was anticipating, when there was a kates, there was an end. This was all arranged, preordained, and when it came, right, it's the opposite of hurry up and wait. They waited, but now, right, we're not going to wait a single second longer than that, not even the blink of an eye. Haraf ayin. Okay, keep going.
Okay. Betet v'av b'Nisan ba'u malachei hasharet etzel Avraham lebasro.
Okay, so what Rashi is now doing here, without saying he's doing it, is if you, reader, accept my read of Be'etzem Hayom Hazeh, we can now infer backwards that every time in the story where it was told that X number of years from now something's going to happen, it wasn't just a general year, it was a general day and a specific day and a specific time of day, which means that if this is happening on the 15th of Nisan, going back to, are we on the night of the 15th of Nisan or the day of the 15th of Nisan, but Pesach day, first day Yantif, right? And it also means that on the 15th of Nisan, what happened? Ba'u malachei etzel Avram lebasro. What does that mean?
Angels came, I don't know hasharet.
The ministering angels.
They came to Abraham, Levasro. I don't know.
Sorot tovot are glad tidings. Livvaser means to give news. What scene are we talking about, Carol?
I'm assuming that he was going to be a father.
Right. The opening of Parshat Vayera, the three men / angels walking by, getting the news or giving the news to Avram and Sarah, they're going to be parents, that was on the 15th of Nisan. Go ahead.
U'betetva b'Nisan nolad Yitzchak, and on the 15th
And because in that scene, if you remember, they said Ka'et Chaya, basically at this time next year, meaning literally this time at 3:12 p.m., right? On the same day. Thus we can infer Yitzchak's birthday. Go ahead.
U'betetva b'Nisan nigzera gzerat ben habetarim.
And we can even go back because the tradition, if we'd read the full Rashi before, there's a 30-year, that's the 400, and the 430 is the time in between. I don't remember if it's the birth of Isaac or the news about the birth of Isaac. 30 years between that and the covenant between the pieces where God says to Avram, this is all going to happen. All happened at the same day, at the same time, be'etzem, in the bony essence of that moment. So by reading be'etzem hayom hazeh as referring to a specific time, no delay, then Rashi says, if you toiled through my previous comment to the previous verse, you'll now see that all these things happen on the exact same day at the exact same time. Okay. Pause, comments, reactions. Rick, your hand is up again or still?
Again.
Go ahead.
Just to react to what you said, I think Rashi chose hamakom for God's name there instead of Yud-Hey Vave, whatever the abbreviation.
Well, he wouldn't have said, Rashi never uses Yud-Hey Vave, but sometimes he'll use Hakadosh Baruch Hu or something like that. He wouldn't, I don't think Rashi writes out Yud-Hey Vave, but go ahead.
No. Obviously, you're correct. I'm looking up at 39 at the Rashi. It's Kodesh Yisrael La Adonai. It's the Lamed Hey Yud there.
Right.
But anyway, I think the reason why he chose Hamakom here is because God isn't in one place; He's everywhere, and going from place to place, there's something going on there with where the Israelites are. Yeah, He's with them in that place, and He's with them in that place.
Very nice.
Maybe.
Very nice. I hope you're right. Right. Like I hope that Rashi's choice of which name for God to use here was not just eeny, meeny, miny, mo, but there's something evocative for him about the omnipresent in place and the omnipresent in time. That's going to be my read of this Rashi going forward. That you were right, Rick. Well done. Okay, Barry.
God is not only omnipresent, but keeps an exact calendar.
Yeah, like the Mayans. Okay. That's that verse. We spent a lot of time on the verse. The Rashi we got through pretty quickly. Anything else on that verse itself? All right. Let's go to verse 42. Whom have we not heard from today? Leonard, do you want to read verse 42? Okay. Let's give Leonard a microphone. Remind me, but 2 minutes before we're going to end, I need to do some calendaring with you all. I always put the calendaring in the WhatsApp, but I want to do it out loud as well. Very exact. But etzem hayom hazeh, Barry.
Leil shimerim hu la'Adonai, lehotzi am mi'eretz Mitzrayim. Hu halayla hazeh la'Adonai shimurim lechol b'nei Yisrael ledorotam.
Okay, before you translate, right, something jumps out in the verse just in terms of which words are used, right? And the fact that you have this word shimurim, which you might think you know the root of, because if you know some Hebrew, you know that shin, mem, resh means something that you've heard before, although, parentheses, at least in classical Hebrew, and the question is, can we learn that back into biblical Hebrew? Which form, which binyan, shin, mem, resh is in, changes the definition, right? In classical Hebrew, lishmor in the pa'al means to protect, guard. Lishamer in the PL, and this is written in the PL, is to preserve, to extend, to perpetuate, okay? But we haven't seen that form in the Torah, and it appears not once but twice in the verse. I want to point that out before Leonard translates. We have Leil Shimurim, the night of Shimurim, and then we have later on just Shimurim. The Laila Hazeh is Shimurim to Bnei Israel. So let's see what you can do with the translation.
Okay. So it was a night of guarding, watching for God, or to God, of God, I don't know, to bring them out from the land of Egypt, comma. It is a night for God of watching for all the children of Israel for all generations.
Right. Does anybody have any idea now what the verse means? Right? Right. Like it's hard. Like they're not such hard vocab words, but it's hard to figure out what's actually being conveyed. In what way do we ascribe to God whatever Shimurim is? God was guarding whom? Is it guarding of God? Is it God doing the guarding? By the way, just look at the Uncle List. Look how Uncle List translates the Shimurim. Can anyone see that word? What's the word? Natir. Anyone ever come across that root?
Torah Karta.
Exactly. You see it at the counter protests on the Israel Day parade. The Nature Karta are the extreme of the anti-Zionist Hasidic community, even more extreme than your classic Satmars. Nature Karta is Aramaic for the guarders, Nature, Shomer, of the city, meaning they ascribe to themselves the ones who are most poised to guard the sanctity of Jerusalem, Nature Karta. So here, Onkelos is translating Shimurim, guard, protect, or something like that, as Natir. Okay, yeah, we've got some hands. Let's go around counterclockwise. Larry, what's going on in the verse? And there's no right answer.
Well, that's good to hear. So when I'm reading a verse and I translate, I do I don't advise this, a superficial translation. So I'm not as concerned with what's the form of the verb and what's the alternative meanings. I kind of capture a meaning. And when I read this verse, it's just very clear.
Okay.
Just as God guarded the going out to the Egyptians, we will guard this night, have a vigil on this night forever. So it's
the second part lands better than the first part. What's the guarding of God's guarding?
God protected our going out, as we already know, and as we're going to see in the future. So, and just as the last verse that Stevie pointed out, 51, makes it clear that it was God that brought us out, God is protecting us. I'm not going to go very deep in it. It just seems to me very clear. God guarded us. Now we're going to guard this night.
Mm-hmm. And so in the second half of the verse, then, the guarding, the Shimurim, is happening. It says lichol, but it's for us to do. But the Ladonai before the second Shimurim is on behalf of God as a payback, right? Because in the second half of the verse, Halayla hazel Ladonai, Shimurim lechol b'nei Yisrael. It's going to be this night on God's behalf that the Israelites are going to
for God. So again, I'm going further than the verse will actually say.
Yeah,
we're going to observe Pesach night and the Seder
for God,
because God was protecting us.
Got it.
Back then. The only thing
midah keneged midah, measure for measure.
Exactly,
nice.
Something like that.
Nice.
I don't know whether that holds up as we look at the words, but in terms of just sort of capturing it, I do have one question, which is
pause.
So what's
pause? It certainly could hold up. That's a plausible and symmetrical read. It's very lovely.
So my question is, what's the difference between shimurim, which is translated as vigil, and I think it's translated as vigil everywhere. Sorry, let me just look here on Kaplan. Yeah, vigil. Kaplan has vigil, and Alter has watch. He has watch.
Everett Fox has keeping watch as a hyphenation because he wants to keep it a word because he wants to go word for word, but he calls it a keeping watch. Interestingly, I don't know of any translation that renders shimurim in the plural. And it's in Hebrew, it's a plural word. Now there are plural words that don't have a plural meaning, right? And vice versa. But we'll look at the other translations. It's rendered often as a singular idea. Keep going.
What's the difference between shimurim and shmirah? I'm thinking of shmirah specifically with regard to the Chevra Kadisha and the men.
Yeah. So shimurim is in the PL. It's the gerund of the PL. Okay. So in the infinitive of the Pa'al, lishmor, to guard, protect, The gerund is shmira, keeping, guarding, protecting. In the PL, the verb lishamer, different vowels, the gerund is shimur, just like dibur or bikur cholim, right? Or nichum avelim, and it means the gerund of whatever the verb lishamer means. In classic, medieval, and modern Hebrew means to preserve. Does that mean it meant that here? Hard to know. Diane.
So I read it differently. So I would say this is the night, that the Exodus night, that God protected the generations of the Jewish people.
So are you referring that to both of the Shimurims in the verse? So now translate the verse through that reading. I'm intrigued.
So God was protecting the people as they left Egypt, and that meant that they would be protected for all future generations.
So rather than God's protecting them meant that they would protect God, God's protecting them that night was God bequeathing an eternity of protection, sort of. Lovely. Okay, let's go around. Everyone, whoever, there are a lot of hands over here. Rebecca, was your hand? Rebecca too?
So my main point was sort of a variation of what Larry said, but I also wanted to point out that as somebody who bakes, it's kind of funny that we're going through chametz, seor, and now shmarim, the yeast.
Preservatives.
Well, yeast is shmarim.
Really?
Yeah. So I don't know why yeast is called shmarim, but
the standard Hebrew word for yeast is shmarim?
Yeah.
Interesting. I had no idea.
Yeah. So it's kind of funny.
That's worth a master's thesis right there.
Sure.
Like, why? Okay, let's go around. Oh, Rebecca,
just to add on the plural of shimurim, I was thinking maybe the plural is associated with all the watchings of the multitude of people that God is going to have to be doing. So it really puts the word with the people.
Yeah. That makom God, that God who's everywhere, is doing shimur in lots of different places simultaneously, and maybe not just throughout space but time. More? Okay, Barry or Tova, was your hand up?
Still thinking a little bit.
Okay. Hopefully you're thinking a lot.
So I'm visualizing God with a stopwatch, like an Olympics race, and lining all the Bnei Israel on the line, ready to go at the time. And it's every one of the Bnei Israel has a stopwatch watching at that time. It's very exacting to go.
Good. So you're connecting the Shimurim with the Be'etzem Hayom Hazeh, that it was a night of a precise observing and therefore protecting the specifics of this night for all of them. Yeah. Tova, then we're going to look at several translations, and then we'll look at Rashi. Because Rashi, the first comment of Rashi reads it entirely differently, which is wonderful. Go ahead.
I'm kind of stuck still back on the how do I express it? The issue of exactitude of time, because ancient cultures and Egypt, actually in particular, were acute measurers of time. And one of the things, for example, that they observed was the exact rising and setting of Venus. And that rising and setting has a cycle that they followed and observed and marked and had special celebrations. The length of that cycle was 1,800 years. Yeah. Which gives you some idea of the consistency of Egyptian culture over a vast amount of time.
Wow.
So what I'm getting down to is that the anniversaries, particular anniversaries within the scope of time, have this power in a lot of ancient civilizations. They're invested with extra power because it's that same exact moment, be it a year later or a decade later or 1,800 years later.
Wow.
This is 430 years later. And I'm reading this verse as preserving.
Nice. It's interesting to think that it's possible that in some ancient societies, they were more aware of vast sweeps of time than we are.
Not on every day, every person basis, but virtually every society had a expert cadre that measured time.
Fascinating.
Exactly.
Okay, I see Stevie and I see Joel and I see Rick. His hand was up and now it's down. His hand got tired. Joel, you got the mic. And
I mean, everyone sort of hinted at this, but I just wanted to make it clear that if you want to bring in Rashi's comment, it's like
the one we're about to read or the previous one?
One we just read.
Okay, that's permissible.
Just as God was really makpid in doing it on the exact day, we should be makpid in doing it on the exact day. I think that's what Barry was hinting at.
And that the shimurim is evocative of that. To watch it very carefully.
Okay.
Which this is where I thought you were going, Rebecca. I don't know if you're one or two, Rebecca Menes. that gets associated with the making of matzah, right? That it's shmura matzah, right? Which my father used to refer to as shnura matzah because that's how it was sold in the Jewish community. Okay.
I'm inclined towards Larry's reading, but I would say I would like it even better if the paragraph break came right before this verse instead of right after this verse, because then this verse would be like introducing a bunch of laws about Pesach Ladorot, which it does, but like whoever put in this paragraph break, I don't know when in history that happened,
right?
But
the spoiler alert that Stevie's referring to is, again, we've talked about this many times. We read this very slowly, one verse at a time. When you pull back, you begin to see the things around it. In verse 43, we're out of story. We're out of narrative for a bit. We're learning about the halachic, that's an anachronism, nitty gritty of who is and who isn't eligible to eat the Korban Pesach. And if this were an introduction to that, without that parsha break, meaning without the opening in the text of the Torah, then Stevie would find Larry's commentary more compelling. Rick, and then I promise you're going to read the Rashi. Even more compelling. Rick.
Just the focusing on the watching brings to mind, so are the Egyptians watching in the middle of the night? I mean, they have guards and stuff. They generally look after the slaves, make sure where they are. Are they watching actively or are they not watching? They said, okay, you guys can go.
Yeah.
So I just thought I'd raise that.
A transferring of the shmirah of the taskmaster to the shmirah of God, right? I'm just reminded of, I don't remember if we started this in camp or USY. In camp and USY, shmirah refers to the counselors who don't let you sneak out at night, right? And you know the song Mipiel, Yivor. So when you get to the last one, Ein Kadosh Kadonai, Ein Rachum Kevein Amram, and then we yell, Ein Shmirah, which in the song meant that no one can protect us like God, but in context meant there's no Shmirah tonight. We can sneak out, right? So Shmirah just can also mean just to watch over and protect. Okay, I want to share some translations, then I want to look at Rashi. Okay. Now we're getting back to Dikduk. Mipiel. Joel, I want to spend 1 minute in your mind. Mipiel. Mi hufal. That is good. Okay. So, Everett Fox. I'll make it bigger on the screen so you can see it. It is a night of keeping watch, Shmurim, for God. Everett Fox always writes Yud Hey Vav Hey as YHWH. I don't like to say that out loud. To bring them out of the land of Egypt. This is a night for God, a keeping watch of all the children of Israel. So Everett Fox's translation suggests that the work of the word Shimurim is the same in both halves of the sentence. It's just it's a keeping watch for God. In what way is a keeping watch for God? A keeping watch of God of all of the Israelites as they're leaving, right? And then maybe connected to what Diane was saying, and this is not just for tonight, but it's for all time throughout the generations. Okay, JPS. Oops, no, where did that go? JPS, which I think we already made kind of reference to. This was for Yud He Vav He, a night of vigil to bring them out of the land of Egypt. That same night is God's. So it kind of puts in a comma after the second God. One of vigil for all the children of Israel throughout the ages. I read JPS and I don't know how JPS is reading the verse. I don't know how JPS has chosen to render the first Shimurim, the second Shimurim. What does it mean that it's one of vigil for the children of Israel? Does that mean that God is going to continue to keep vigil for them, or the vigiling is moving from God to the children of Israel? I don't fault JPS, but it's not clear to me. They're kind of hedging their bets, I think. Koren, what's that? Preserve the ambiguity. Maybe that's intentional, right? Koren, it is a night of watchfulness, Shimurim, to the Lord. I don't know what it means to be watchfulness to the Lord. For bringing them out from the land of Mitzrayim, this is the Lord's watch night. So it actually changes the English of how Shimurim is rendered. For all the children of Israel in the generations. Metsuda, this was a night of vigil for Adonai, not Adonai, Adonai, to bring them out of the land of Egypt. This night remains a night of vigil to Adonai for all of Bnei Israel, for all the generations, similar to Diane's reading. I wanted to read the one, where is he? I don't think so.
They say keepings.
Keepings. Charles Kahana, which I had never heard of his translation until Safari added a few years ago, and I would look at it. He reads it not word for word. He renders it, this is now a 60-year-old translation, into a sentence that makes sense, but is not word for word. That day was set aside by the Eternal to bring them forth from the land of Egypt. So how is he rendering Shimurim? A set aside. I don't know what etymology he's working with, or if he's not caring. He's just saying, this is what the verse meant. That night has been set aside to the Eternal by all the children of Israel throughout their generations. So it's similar in this way to Larry's read, that God did a Shimurim, a setting aside, and then in response, Israelites have agreed in return to continue to set that night aside. Okay? Yeah. Okay. It's wonderful. We don't know what the verse means, and that's fun. Okay, Rashi is going to introduce a read that is entirely different than anything that's been said so far since we started looking at the verse. So, Leonard, back to you. Leil Shimurim.
What verse is this?
Verse 42, excuse me. Begins with Shahaya HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Okay.
And here Rick is using HaKadosh Baruch Hu to reference God, not HaMakom. So, yeah, maybe it's very intentional as to when he chooses which.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
Leil Shimurim. Shehaya HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shomer Umetzapelo Lekayem Chavtachato Lehotzi Me'eretz Mitzrayim.
Okay. There's a lot more going on in what Rashi said than his words. Let's translate the words and then we'll build it out.
Okay. So the night of watching for God was watching and anticipating it.
Oh, okay. See what Rashi did there? Shomer umitzapeh. Mitzapeh, Leonard, properly translated as to anticipate, to look forward to. Har hatzofim, ayin letzion, Sophia, to look ahead. By saying shomer umitzapeh, he's taking the root from the verse, shomer shimurim, and using that verb and then giving essentially a synonym, which means he's translating shomer, not to guard, not to protect, but to wait for, to anticipate. Does that ring any bells? Ring any biblical bells? Look at this. I'll share the screen. It's interesting. Rashi does not bring us there directly. Maybe he just assumes we know it. Sometimes he'll bring us there. In the beginning of the Yosef story, when Yosef starts to tell the dreams, Vayikanu bo echav, his brothers were envious. The aviv and their father, shamar et hadavar. It does not mean, it can't mean there that Jacob protected the thing. What does that mean? Or guarded it. No, it's often translated as he kind of waited to see how it was going to turn out, right? Here it's translated as kept the matter in mind, but the classic way of understanding that shamar, if you were forced to use the notion of guarding or watching, it would be guarding and watching and not doing anything, just standing back and guarding. But it's really a different meaning. It means to kind of just wait with expectation. Rashi says that is the meaning of the Shimrim here. This is the night that God had shomered, waited, umitzapelo, and had anticipated to do what? L'kayem.
L'kayem haftachato, to fulfill his promise to bring them out of Egypt.
Right, and you can imagine that Rashi is referring to either the promise that God had said to Moses, or going back, given with the zones that Rashi has been in, the promise is going back to Abraham, that this was a long wait, sort of a patient wait. If we had to anthropomorphize God, it was hard for God to observe his people in distress, but God shomered the thing, waited for the thing, and now. Right? So Leil Shimurim, the first Leil Shimurim, according to Rashi, is getting into God, the psychology of God, sort of, right? That God was waiting for this, and now it finally has time to make it happen. Let's read the second one, and then we'll I see some hands. You know what? Just this is going to sound weird because we're running out of time. Skip the next Rashi comment and go to Rashi's comment in Shimurim L'chol B'nei Yisrael Adoratam. I want to make sure it's the same verse, but it's just skip one comment. I want to make sure we read this one, which contrasts Rashi's read of the first Shimurim to the second Shimurim in the verse. You see that, Leonard? Skip the comment on Hu Halayla Hazel Adonai, which is just like 8 words.
Okay, Shimurim L'chol B'nei Yisrael Adoratam.
Yeah.
Meshumar ba min ha mazikin ke'inyan shene'amar v'lo yitain hamashchit v'gomer.
Okay. Rashi is using some idiomatic Hebrew here. Mishumar uva. You can't translate literally. It means will be protected from when it comes. Is sort of how it is. You have to think of it. So the Israelites will be mishumar, protected, uva, when upon the arrival of mazikim. What are mazikim? Destructive forces, right? Lahazik, nizikin is tort law, right? When there's been damages. Kanyan, related to that which it says, v'lo yitain hamashchit, when God was giving the instructions for the 10th plague, that the destroyer, the 10th plague, was not going to be able to hit the Israelites. And how then is this related to the Chol HaDorot? Because the verse refers to L'chol B'nei Yisrael Adorotam, that just as the Israelites were protected that night from the external force that could have caused damage, so too, by being the one saved by God to leave Egypt for all time, this hasn't happened so well, will also be protected from future mazikim.
That's what I heard. Reading one.
Yeah, essentially, right? That what's happening tonight is a paradigm for what's going to continue to happen, and therefore Rashi is reading the 2 words shimurim to really mean very, very different words, right? The first one is awaiting and expecting. The second one is being protected. The first one is being done, is God is experiencing. The second one is that which God is promising for the Israelites. Very different read than we had discussed on the table. Barry, and then anyone else, and then Norm. And then we're getting close to the end.
It's this active anticipation. It's God's constant anticipation. Should there be anything, God's anticipating being there. Exactly.
Yeah. Norm?
It's hard for me to reconcile what Rashi is saying with what Rashi must have known, because Pesach night has not consistently been a night of safety for the Jewish people. Mm-hmm. And he must have known that already in his youth, let alone in his adulthood. And
you think it's like wishful thinking? It's he's writing how it ought to have been, but it wasn't.
We know he could have had a different interpretation for this verse.
Yeah, interesting.
And there's no explanation as to why he picked this one, which he knew doesn't come true.
Yeah, that's a fascinating insight. Any other, Tova?
Actually, two comments. One is a question back to Norm. I know to what you're referring. I'm just trying to think, are we really in the time of Rashi? We don't know exactly when in his lifetime Rashi wrote this, but certainly in the earlier part of his lifetime, was that actually a period at that point where Jewish homes were invaded at that time, or Jews were persecuted at that time? I'm not so sure it was quite that early. I mean, it's still probably post-Crusade, pre-Crusade.
You think Rashi's writing pre-Crusades?
Well,
When did
that's
the
what I'm
first Crusade
wondering.
begin?
I'm wondering, yeah, what 1095 was the announcement of the first Crusade.
1095 was the announcement of the first,
Yeah.
and Rashi's born.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, so he may have been writing this before the beginning of those kinds of times.
Yes. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah,
Tova.
and the second, unrelated, but it seems to me that the interpretation we're looking at now is presenting the apex moment of the peoplehood of Israel as it now waits in anticipation for what God has promised. This is the moment.
I love that you brought in the word waiting there. Paul hand was up, and then Larry, and then I'm going to call it.
I was just saying
Microphone.
2 minutes.
Oh, 2 minutes. Thank you, Larry.
So earlier I was going to say, maybe we can interpret the first Rashi as this was the night God was waiting for.
Yeah.
If that's the reading of that one, now I'm going to interpretively read the Rashi. And this is the night that the Jews in the future will be waiting for, when they will be protected. Not that they're going to be protected, but now we're waiting for.
Hope it might be.
What God, when are you going to protect us again?
Nice. Okay. We're heading into a choppy zone of time together. So let me say the following with an asterisk. I'm intending to go to Israel next week to staff the Pressman trip. It also happens to be the case, and just let this be, that my mother is very, very ill right now in Boston, and all of my plans for the next few weeks are hanging in the balance. So what I don't imagine I'm going to be in Los Angeles a week from today, because either I'm going to be in Israel or I'll be on the East Coast. The next Wednesday that I'm anticipating being in Los Angeles is Erev New Year's, the 31st, which I think there's no reason any reason not to meet that day. It's you're going to drink eggnog that night, but in the morning we should meet. So the first question is, how many of the dates, December 10th, 17th, and 24th, Leonard, are you available to operate a class? All of them. Okay. So I'll put that into WhatsApp, and then just please rely on WhatsApp for any updates. And I hope the updates are just calendrical and nothing more catastrophic.
So you're saying I'm teaching the next 3 weeks unless
Correct.
you preempt me?
Correct. And I can't imagine a situation where in any of those 3 weeks I'll be in Los Angeles, because I'm scheduled to fly back from Israel on the 24th. So if things go well, I won't be back until the end of the 24th. And if they don't go well, I'm not going to be here. Thank you. Yeah. All right. Have a good day, everyone. Kol Tuv, early Shabbat Shalom, early Happy Hanukkah.
You've been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast website or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information on Temple Beth Am, Los Angeles, please visit www.tbala.org.